Today we're covering lesson 26.1, which is called factoring by the greatest common factor. So we've done adding and subtracting, and most recently we did multiplying. To undo multiplying, it's called factoring. I know usually it's called dividing, but in this case we call it factoring. So we are not going to open the book today. We're going to cover a lot of notes on our note sheet. And then we'll open the book next time. But we are going to identify the GCF of the terms in a polynomial. And after we identify it, we need to factor out that GCF. Okay? So on our note sheet, GCF stands for greatest common factor. Greatest is biggest, largest. So we need to find the GCF of the following, which means we're looking for the greatest number that goes into each of these, or the greatest number that they're divisible by without a remainder, without anything left over, no decimals, no fractions. So you have a factor chart on the back of your note sheet. So if you flip that over, you are going to see 1 through 100. So find the big 36 and the big 54, and we want to find the biggest number that they have in common. So I see they both have 2, 3, 6, and 9, but those are not the largest. So the largest number I see that they have in common is 18. So for number 2, we're going to look at 15 and 12, and our notes say that we're trying to find the greatest number, the greatest factor that goes into 15 and 12, or that 15 and 12 are divisible by. So if you're looking on your factor sheet, find 12 and 15. And I'm seeing the largest number that they have in common is 3. But I cannot stop there. I also noticed that 15 has an x to the 7th power and 12 has an x to the 4th power. They have the same variable, x and x. So our notes say that we need to find the smallest exponent on that common variable. So they both share an x, but how many do they share is what we're trying to figure out here. So one of these has 7 and one of them has 4. So in common, they have at most 4 x's. So 4 is the smallest of those two numbers. Now we're going to do the same thing for questions 3 and 4. So I'm looking at 32 and 40 on my factor sheet. The biggest number is 8. Now, next, if we look at the variables here, I see they both have an a, so I want the smallest exponent on that a. So there's 2 and 3, and 2 is the smallest, so they just have a squared, 2 a's in common. I also see that they both have a b. This one just has one of them. This one has 2. So the smallest is just 1. They have at most one b in common. Question 4. Let's take a look at 14 and 21. So on your factor sheet, if I'm looking at 14 and 21, what is the largest number that they have in common here? it would be a 7. And then I see that they both have an m. One has 4 and one has 5. So the smallest is 4. They share m to the 4th power. They also have an n in common, n cubed and n squared. Smallest would be n squared, 2 of them. Okay. So this is the first step in doing these questions here, is just finding the greatest common factor. So we're going to do the exact same thing again for question 5, 6, and 7, but now instead of just having them listed, we're looking at an actual binomial or trinomial, right? 2 terms and 3 terms, because I see addition and subtraction signs here. But my process is the exact same because I'm just going to identify the greatest common factor. So looking at 22 and 33, find your factor sheet. The biggest number that they share is 11. Do they both have a variable? No, they don't. So we can't pull out or factor out a k because they don't share a k. Question 6. 12, 14, we can ignore the negative for right now. So 12, 14, and 10. So now I have 3 numbers. So on your factor sheet, put a finger by 10, 12, and 14. And the biggest number that they all have in common is 2. They're all divisible by 2. Do they all share the same variable? Yes, they all have a y. This has 4, 2, and just 1 y here. So at most, they only share 1 y because we want the smallest amount of variables. Question 7. I don't see any coefficients, any numbers out in front, so I don't have to pull out a number here. We would just be pulling out variables. So they have an x, both of them, and I see 5 and 3. 3 is the smallest, so at most they have an x cubed in common. And then we have a y squared and to the 4th power, so we're going to choose the smaller one, which is squared. So x cubed y squared is the greatest common factor for that. Okay, so what we just covered was the first learning target where we were just identifying or finding the GCF or the greatest common factor. So now what we need to do is we need to actually pull it out or factor it out. Okay, so we're going to find the GCF for question 8 by looking at 30, 15, and 10. So on your factor sheet, find 30, 15, and 10. The largest number there is 5. And then now I need to look at the variables, and they do have variables in common here. So I have x to the 8th, x to the 5th, and x squared. So I want the smallest one, and that would be x squared. Okay, here's how we keep going. You have 2 stars on your note sheet or asterisks. So what we're going to do is we're going to write divide our numbers. And you can abbreviate numbers if you want to. Because we're factoring it out or pulling it out, that means this is a division problem. So I need to divide my coefficients here. So we're going to take 30 and divide by 5. 30 divided by 5 is 6. Okay. Now, think back to our exponent rules. I need to take x to the 8th and divide it by x squared. But if you remember our exponent rules, which is on our graphic organizer, when we divide, we keep the base, which is the x, and we actually subtract our exponents. Okay, so it would be keeping the x, and we're going to do 8 minus 2. 8 minus 2 is 6. Okay, and next I see negative 15, so I'm going to do that divided by 5, which is 3. And then I need to take and do x to the 5th power divided by x squared, which means we just subtract 5 minus 2 and we get 3. And now we're doing 10 divided by 5, which is 2. And then look, I have an x squared, but I'm pulling out or factoring out an x squared. I'm taking it away. So if we have 2 minus 2, it's gone. It's x to the 0 power. Or if I have x squared divided by x squared, those cancel each other out, and we just get 1. 2 times 1 is just 2, so I'm going to end my parenthesis there. We do not need any x's. Notice I started with 1, 2, 3 terms, so inside my parentheses I need 1, 2, 3 terms. And then out in front is my GCF, my greatest common factor. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, number 9, we are going to look at 6, negative 18, and negative 36. So find 6, 18, and 36 on your factor chart. And the greatest common factor is 6. I see that they all have an A. So cubed to the 4th and to the 5th power, so the smallest is the 3. And then I see they all have a B, 3, 2, and 5. I need the smallest, which is 2. So now, remember, we're going to divide our numbers and subtract our exponents. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. Then I have a cubed divided by a cubed. Those are the exact same, so they cancel each other out. B, 3 minus 2 is 1. You can write the 1, but you don't have to. Minus 18 divided by 6 is 3. 4 minus 3, we're subtracting our exponents. Then look, I have a b squared, and I'm factoring out a b squared, so those cancel each other out. Negative 36 divided by 6 is 6. A, 5 minus 3 is 2. B, 5 minus 2 is 3. So that's my final answer. It was a little bit longer and trickier. Number 10. What I want you to do is look at 21 and 7, and then look at your variables and see what is the greatest common factor. What are we pulling out here? So I always start with the smallest number. So 7 is smaller than 21. So I'm going to start with 7 and see if 7 goes into itself and 21, and that works. And then I know they both have a y, 6 and 3. 3 is the smallest. Okay, parentheses. And because I have two terms here, a binomial, that means inside my parentheses I still need to have two terms. We're going to be left with a binomial inside. So 21 divided by 7 is 3. Then we're going to subtract our exponents. 6 minus 3 is 3 minus, and then look, 7y cubed and 7y cubed, those match. So 7y cubed divided by 7y cubed is 1. Right? 7 divided by 7 is 1. Y cubed divided by y cubed is also 1. I need to have this 1 here as a placeholder. A lot of students just say, oh, they cancel out and I don't have to write anything. Okay? But if we think about checking our answer, we would do that by using the distributive property, by multiplying back through. And if I multiply back through, 7 times 3 is 21. 3 plus 3 is 6. And 7y cubed times negative 1 is negative 7y cubed. And this matches what I started with, so I know that I answered the question correctly. So for all of these questions, you can do the distributive property to ensure that your answers are correct or that you're getting 100%. And if not, then go back and check to see where you made a mistake. Question 11. I do not see a coefficient or a number out in front of anything here. So I have a 3 and a negative 5, but the first term and the last term do not have a number. So we cannot take out a number here. Okay, so I'm going to leave the 3 and the negative 5 alone. What I can look at is, are my variables and letters the same? Yes, they all share an x. 9, 6, 4, and 2. So the smallest of those would be 2. So let's start subtracting. 9 minus 2 is 7. Leave the 3 because I'm not dividing it by anything. 6 minus 2 is 4. Leave the 5. I also didn't divide that by anything. X, 4 minus 2 is 2, plus x squared divided by x squared is just 1. I need my 1 there as my placeholder. Because I started with 4 terms, so I need 4 terms inside my parentheses there. Question 12. I want you to try this on your own. So look at 48 and 16 on your factor sheet and find what the biggest number is. It's 16. Do they share an x? No. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to figure out what your answer is going to be here. Divide your numbers. 48 divided by 16 is 3, and then I need the x with it. 16 divided by 16 is 1. I started with a binomial. My answer has to have a binomial inside the parentheses. All right, number 13. I want you to try to find the GCF. So pause, look at 8, 16, and 4. You can do it. So the biggest would be 4. Then I need to look at the letters. So I see that each term has an x. 4, 2, or 1, so they share 1 in common. Then the middle term has a w and the last term has a y. So they don't all have w's and y's in common. So I'm only pulling out a 4x. That's my greatest common factor. So let's divide our numbers. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 4 minus 1 is 3. 16 divided by 4 is 4. X, 2 minus 1 is 1. Leave the w. Plus 4 divided by 4 is 1. X divided by x is 1, but I don't want to write another 1 because I don't want it to look like it's an 11. Okay? You actually don't have to write either of those ones, but you still need a y there. So that would be our final answer. I have 3 terms to begin with, so inside my parentheses I still have 3 terms. Now, I could go back and multiply, which was our last test, to see if I got this answer correct.